You did what I'm saying. If they all hollers, I'm a counterfeit. Yeah, wanted money, I couldn't enjoy a class.
It's your boy, yadiiiigg, 4 I's, 2 G's, and today we're in the different room. We're back with another episode of the Q&A, and I've only got one question today because I thought it was a really good question, so I wanted to do a bit more of like a longer answer to it. If you guys got any other more questions you want me to answer, make sure to drop them in the comments below and like one do you want to see me answer and whatnot. Basically, I'm just going to be going through albums I'm most disappointed in and albums that I thought were the worst of this year so far. Basically, the distinction between the two that I thought was like disappointed is I liked the albums, but I just expected more from them. And worst is just albums I didn't really find enjoyment in for the most part. Make sure to let me know what you guys got, what albums you guys like, what albums you guys didn't like, what albums you were disappointed in. Always interested to know what you guys think. Drop some more questions. And that's it, let's just get to it. Also, of course, make sure to follow your boy on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But let's get it. And kicking it off with disappointed. No particular order for these, by the way, but firstly, we have Migos with Culture. Now, this is tough because it was a really good album, and I did enjoy a lot of cuts from it, and I still hear heaps of it being played, especially when I'm out in a club or something. Like, a lot of it does get played, but I don't know, I just expected more. I expected them to progress production-wise a bit more. I expected them to progress lyrically more. I felt like what I got on this, I could have got on Young Rich Nation or before, minus kind of them biting Travis. And that was another thing as well. I felt like they were biting Travis way too much on this, and they didn't really progress into their own style. But in saying that, it was still a fucking good album, and there's so many cuts I like from it still. For my expectations of what I thought they could have done, it didn't quite reach it, but still a good album, so I'm not complaining. And moving on from Migos, we have Nav with Nav. And I don't know if disappointed is the right word I would use for how I feel about Nav's debut, but I definitely felt like he could have done more, especially lyrically. Like, some of the bars are just laughable on this thing. Like, they're terrible. And as well, I feel like the production could have been a bit more ambitious, a bit more interesting. And I feel like on the whole, like the Lucy's you dropped beforehand were just so much stronger songwriting wise. It came through with much stronger hooks. And when I find myself playing the Lucy's more than I do the songs on the actual tape, it's not a good sign. So I feel like he really needs to come with something a bit more interesting next time to really keep me engaged. And after Nav, we move on to the Freddie Gibbs album that he dropped. Now this is a tough one because it wasn't a bad album, and like, I kind of don't want to say I'm disappointed in it, but at the same time, the expectations that he set with Pinata and with Shadow of a Doubt were so fucking high. Like, those were a couple of my favorite projects over the last 2 years. I bumped them heaps, and when I saw him live, he was so good. But with this album, I couldn't help but feel it was a bit rushed. I don't know, it didn't really give me that polished Gibbs feel that I felt like on Pinata or Shadow of a Doubt. Like, those albums just feel really polished and almost perfected in a sense, like they're really clean cut. But this, I didn't really get that same feel, so didn't really live up to my expectations. And lastly on the list, we have Lil Yachty, Teenage Emotions. I've spoken about this album a lot on my channel, a bit too much on my channel, I think. Here's what I'm gonna say on it. Disappointed because it wasn't bad. I didn't hate the album like a lot of people do. I see a lot of people downright hate the album. I don't downright hate the album, but for the expectations I have for a debut album for someone like Lil Yachty, he just didn't meet them. It's as simple as that. And I've already spoken about this album so much, so I think I might leave it there. And that's all I had for my disappointed list. And moving on to my worst, I picked 5 albums from this year so far. I'm pretty sure they were all dropped in 2017. Number 1 is Russ. Now, after Russ talked himself up like he's some fucking god for all the work he does independently or what he does by himself, I decided to give it a chance and see if there was anything actually good about his music. And the whole time I was listening to this album, and I gave it a couple chances, I couldn't help but feel like there was literally no point listening to it. Like, why the fuck would I listen to a Russ album when I could just listen to Drake and get much better melodies, much better lyrics, and just much better songs as a whole? Like, it just feels like another Drake clone, and I found no reason to return to this at all. Just boring. And I'd rather listen to If You're Reading This It's Too Late if I'm looking for this style of music. Then after Russ, we get to Logic's new album. I know what you're probably thinking, I'm some like typical Logic hater that hates on Logic for everything he does and finds everything he does corny, but that's actually not how I feel about Logic at all. Like, I've been a fan of him for quite some time now. Even with his tapes back in the day, he used to bump a lot, and when Under Pressure came out, I was bumping that heaps. His debut album, I was bumping that heaps, and I like that a lot. But with this album here, something didn't sit for me right. It's not that like the idea or the concept behind the album is inherently corny. It's just that it feels so forced. If like when Logic made Under Pressure, I feel like songs on that album and the narrative he was saying on that album, it didn't feel forced. It kind of felt natural, like, you know, he was just expressing what he had inside of him. But on songs on this album, it felt forced and it didn't really come across as natural as something like Under Pressure. And even when I get to the songwriting and the production, I just didn't find it as interesting. I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad album, but it just doesn't work for me personally. And moving on from Logic, we get to Drake with More Life. And I feel like I was a part of the minority who actually liked Views. I didn't love Views, but I liked it, and especially in the few months when it came out, I was bumping it quite a bit. So I was a bit excited for More Life. I thought, you know what, I'll check it out. I'll probably get like a heap of tracks that I like and then a couple weaker ones that I just won't listen to. But that's not what I got at all. I probably got like 5 or 6 tracks that I really liked, and then the rest were just average, and I couldn't fuck with them at all. Portland stands out as a good track. Glow I liked a lot. Young Thug on Sacrifices was fucking amazing. He killed that shit. But as a body of work, it's just boring, and I didn't really like too many of the tracks. So that's Drake's More Life. And then moving on from More Life, we get to Young M.A's recent tape, Her Story. Now, I didn't want to jump on the Young M.A hate bandwagon because I feel it was a bit unfair if I just judge her without listening to this music. So when this tape dropped, I decided to give it a chance because I actually liked Ooh quite a bit. And then by the second song, I already realized she was trying to remake Ooh already, and I knew exactly what it was in for the rest of the tape. But I stuck it out and gave it a chance, and I didn't find any tracks I liked on this, to be brutally honest. Apart from Ooh actually at the end, but I already heard that before. And the thing is, I feel like people pump Young M.A as a lyricist too much, just because she spits longer verses than your average rapper in 2017. And just because she doesn't always rhyme about diamonds or money or something like that, does not mean she's a lyricist. If you actually break down the bars that she's saying, and if you actually look into the lyrics, she's not that special. So overall, I really didn't like the tape and I found it a bit boring. Moving on though, from Young M.A, we get to last on the list, which is Big Sean's most recent album. The thing is with Big Sean, like, I've never been a fan of Sean, but I will say Dark Sky Paradise had more than a few tracks that I liked. And even after that dropped, a few months after, I found myself returning to tracks like Paradise, and the intro was really good, and it had a few other tracks that I really liked. So I wasn't anticipating this, but I was definitely interested to see if Sean could follow up and progress. But then I played the album through a couple times, and I realized, fuck, was I wrong. So fucking boring. It felt like he fucking regressed on this. It felt like he took a step backwards. It felt like on Dark Sky Paradise he took a step forward. He did so much to garner my attention, and I feel like he gained a lot of respect on that album. And then this album just kind of fucking wiped the slate clean from all the shit that he did on Dark Sky Paradise. I just found it so fucking boring and generic. I feel like he didn't do anything interesting or anything to hold my attention on this album at all. I find no reason to want to listen to this album again. And I think that's all I really need to say on Big Sean's album. And that brings us to the end of the list. So that's Disappointed and the worst albums for me in 2017 so far. Thanks a lot for watching. Make sure to let me know what you guys got, what you're disappointed in, what you think were the worst, what you think were the best. I'm always really interested to know what you guys are feeling and what you're not. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on all notifications. Also make sure to drop more questions in the comments and I'll get to them if I like them. Make sure to follow your boy on all social medias. That's all from me today though guys. Thanks a lot for watching.